Recognizing the need for the uniforming approach, government enacted the Disaster Management Act, as we are, I think all of us, we might be aware now, because disasters have always been declared in line with Disaster Management Act from the year 2002. And adding to that, the Disaster Management Framework, which prescribe on how the country should respond to various disasters that might occur, was also introduced in the year 2005. Can you please to the next slide, next slide. Oh, they're moving it there. Okay. Just continue.
When you just continue, then you can just maybe call for the next slide.
Okay. So the framework was also introduced in 2005, and then with all these pieces of legislation having been introduced recently, they have made the Fundraising Act now to be dysfunctional, because they all predate the Fundraising Act, which was introduced in 1978. So Disaster Management Act of 2005, we have PFMA Act of 1999, we also have the Social Assistance Act of 2004, and we have various financial legislations that are not aligned with the Fundraising Act. So the purpose of the Disaster Management Act is to enjoin all the departments to contribute towards disaster risk management. But now, as we all know it, or as we might have seen, that the Fundraising Act is presently silent on the issues of disaster risk, but only focuses on the issues of disaster response. That is one issue that the Act is trying to address, to ensure that we build resilient communities. And whilst we build resilient communities, we also come up with intervention as government to try and address disaster risk matters. So it is therefore prudent for the Fundraising Act to be amended with a view to introduce disaster relief and National Social Development Fund. By doing so, we'll address the issues of disaster risk mitigation that are part of the requirements as enjoined by Disaster Management Act and Disaster Management Framework. As I've mentioned below, before, disaster response and risk mitigation is a shared responsibility by various stakeholders. So the primary legislation when it comes to the disaster management is the Disaster Management Act. So we, as the department, we also provide the intervention, sector intervention. So then the Fundraising Act becomes secondary to the Disaster Management Act. But if you look in the past, the Fundraising Act was making provisions for declaration of disasters, whereas the Disaster Management Act, which is the recent act, was also making that. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that the disasters are managed through the Disaster Management Act, and then the policy on disaster management for South Africa is prescribed through the Disaster Management Framework. So what we are proposing now is that we would like to amend the Fundraising Act to bring about dissolution of various funds that we have mentioned. We have the three dormant funds at the moment, which is the State President Fund, which is the Social Relief Fund, and the Refugee Relief Fund. These funds were all established in 1978, and then various boards to manage these funds were also established in terms of the act that we are amending of 1978. So once these funds have been dissolved, they will be amalgamated into one fund, which will be called Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund, which will cater for socio-economic developmental projects, including providing humanitarian relief to people who are affected by disasters. Okay, maybe just to get into deeper details about what were these funds meant for. Each and every fund that was established through this act had a specific purpose, of which those purpose, the purpose of some of the funds, now that we are in a new dispensation, you might find that those specific purposes are no longer relevant in the new dispensation. For instance, what was declared a refugee in 1978, what was declared as a victim of political violence, as a victim of as a victim of terrorism, might not be the same as what we define the refugee in our current days. So the Fundraising Act promulgated in 1978 to provide for control over collections of contributions from the public and to set up the following funds. So basically, the Fundraising Act was empowering these funds to also receive additional funding from the various sources. So the Disaster Relief Fund, which is the only active fund in all these funds that we have mentioned, is the Disaster Relief Fund, which is with the aim of providing assistance to victims and survivors of disaster. The fund is active, as I've mentioned, and provides short-term relief to victims of disaster in poor communities. And then we have the State President Fund to provide short-term relief to victims and survivors of acts of terrorism. So since 1994, the fund was activated in 2002 to assist with the burial of the victim of a bomb blast in Soweto. We might be aware of, it's been a long time. So 2 children of the deceased received support until 2010 when they reached adulthood and returned to Lesotho. The refugee relief is meant to provide assistance to refugees. It has remained dormant since the new dispensation. Hence, I mentioned earlier that the challenges in implementing these, some of these objectives of these funds is that what was defined as a refugee by then might not be the same as what is defined as a refugee today, because the refugee relief was the refugees were refugees in the country at that time who were supporting that particular regime. And then the Social Relief Fund is meant to provide funding to organizations providing assistance to victims of violence, political violence. The fund was last activated in 2001 and has remained dormant ever since. Because now, as much as it's a social relief fund, but the purpose was very specific of these particular funds. And then we have, lastly, the National Defence Force Fund, but this one falls within the ambit of the National Department of Defence. So as indicated earlier, that the Fundraising Act has become dysfunctional over the years. Given that the introduction of the NPO Act of 1997 resulted in some of the chapters of the Fundraising Act being repealed. So now the only chapter that remains applicable and relevant is only Chapter 2 of the Fundraising Act. Chapter 2 only speaks about the establishment and management of various funds that I have mentioned earlier, and about appointment of the boards and how the board should be composed, and how the fund, it prescribes the powers and functions of the boards. So what we are saying now is that the relief services as contained in the Fundraising Act are fragmented and costly to administer due to lack of consistency. I think earlier on I mentioned that the main purpose is to dissolve these funds, align the funds with the PFMA, the Disaster Management Act, Social Assistance Act, so that also it can also cater for the issues of disaster risk mitigation. So another thing is that in most cases, the fund duplicates relief services that are catered for by the Social Assistance Act when disasters occur. As we might all be aware that the Social Assistance Act provides for disaster relief, regulates for disaster relief as well, whereas the Fundraising Act so there is that kind of overlap in terms of providing the resources. So what has remained a challenge then is that the amounts lie locked in the 3 different funds that I mentioned earlier, therefore making it difficult to address the wide-ranging emergency situations affecting vulnerable communities. So just as a matter of emphasizing as well, Chairperson and honorable members and the members of the public, to say 4 boards dealing with issues of relief have been found to be inappropriate and inefficient in emergency situations. As we have noticed that in most cases, there has been a search. You find that NGOs and other sectors are at the forefront when it comes to disaster response. But certain stakeholders or sectors, they come last. So the way that the Fundraising Act is currently structured, it provides a reactive kind of response to disasters. So what we're trying to address now is to be efficient, strengthening governance, and also be efficient in terms of providing a relief when a disaster strikes. So what we are stating there is that while Disaster Management Act enjoins government to develop and implement disaster risk, does reduce the impact of disaster when it occurs, the Fundraising Act promotes a reactive intervention, as I've mentioned earlier. So also, maybe to indicate, Chairperson and members, that the portfolio committees previously, including the National Treasury and Auditor General, raised concerns on the multiple funds and the various boards which impact negatively on the administration and secretariat cost, and also these funds remaining dormant. But maybe just to add, for the benefit of the members to say, as much as the funds have remained dormant, but they are receiving interest because they are invested with the South African Reserve Bank and receiving interest on a monthly basis. But they are also subjected to audit by Auditor General. So what is the strategic focus of what is it that the intent that we are trying to achieve is that we want to amend the provision of the Fundraising Act by removing duplication of services inherent in the current relief fund, as I've mentioned earlier, to streamline responses to disasters and to allow for disaster risk and developmental strategies to be deployed. So the fund will be able to deal with a broad spectrum of socio-economic development issues as determined by the minister. So these are the main issues that we are trying to address. And then when it comes to the purpose of the bill aims to rationalize the Fundraising Act of Act number 107 of 1978 by consolidating the Disaster Relief Fund, the Refugee Relief Fund, the Social Relief Fund, and the State President's Fund into one Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund, so as to focus proactive mitigation of disasters and promote the social development of communities. So this will contribute then to the streamlining of administrative services and rationalize administrative and secretariat costs to the Department of Social Development, because the various boards have been found to be costing more as compared to having just one board, one secretariat dealing with the issues that have been catered for by various funds. So the newly established Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund should be empowered to raise funds from the public, the private sector, including international donors, to address short-term intervention and also impact on a long-term developmental issues. The main issue that I've always been repeating is that we want to align the Fundraising Act with the provision of the Disaster Management Act and the Public Finance Management Act and other related financial frameworks. So coming then to the main issues that we are addressing by the amendments. The ones that are projected here talks to the current provisions of the Fundraising Act that we are amending. Section 12.1, it talks to minister as meaning Minister of Social Welfare and Pensions, which is an outdated definition of a minister because we don't have a ministry that is called Social Welfare and Pensions. Section 17.3, it tries to it talks to the reduction of the board members because currently, in the original provision, it talks to having 15 members of the board, of whom half shall be appointed on the full-term basis. So we're also looking at halving the number, reducing the number of the board, also to reduce the cost on the state. Section 18A, it talks to the objective of the current objective of the Disaster Relief Fund. And then Section 20.1, it talks to the issue of the board being given powers to be able to collect contributions and control and collection of those contributions by themselves or by other persons or bodies. And in Section 20.1, it talks about giving the board the powers to operate with the aim for the board to achieve its objectives. And in Section 20.2, a board may exercise such powers and shall perform such function as confirmed or imposed to it by the Act. Is the emphasis on that the board is established in terms of this founding legislation and must act in accordance with the founding legislation, which is the Fundraising Act. And Section 25 talks to the issue of the administrative work which should be done by officers employed in the public service and also shall be under the secretary, and the secretary shall provide control of the people that are delegated to provide the secretariat to the board. Section 36, it talks about giving minister the powers to make regulations relating to, it can be the financial year of the fund, including any matter which the minister deems necessary or expedient to prescribe in order that the object of this act may be achieved. So any regulation made under subsection 1 may be prescribed penalties. So this indicates the powers that are given to the minister in terms of making regulations in the current legislation, in the current act as it stands. So this is moving forward. Then what is it that we are trying to address through these amendments? Clause 1 of the bill seeks to amend the definition of a minister. As I mentioned earlier, that the definition of a minister is outdated as per the current provisions in the Fundraising Act. And clause 2 of the bill seeks to amend section 17 of the Principal Act. This one talks to the number of board members, because 15 members have been found to be too many members and costly to the department as well. And also convening the meetings of the board can prove to be difficult if you have to think about the issues of the quorum and the decision needed to be taken urgently, given that this is a disaster relief board and a fundraising board. So there are certain urgent decisions that need to be taken, but then convening a meeting of 15 board members, some members are not available, and et cetera, et cetera. So the proposal now is to move from 15 members to 10 members. And then clause 3 of the bill seeks to amend section 18 of the Principal Act. As I have mentioned earlier, that this talks to introducing a new objective for the new fund that will be established, which will be the Disaster Relief and the National Social Development Fund, with all those consolidated funds, 4 funds, under the ambit of the department. And clause 4 of the bill seeks to amend the principle in order to give power to the minister to give guidelines to a board in relation to disbursement of funds, and to ensure that a board acts in accordance with ethical principles. This might relate to PFMA and any other ethical principles or legislations that the board needs to adhere to. Clause 5 of the bill seeks to amend section 22 of the Principal Act, mainly to provide for the financial management and control of the funds in accordance with Public Finance Management Act, as I had indicated earlier. So clause 6 of the bill seeks to substitute section 25 of the Principal Act. The proposed substitution seeks to further provide for the administrative work. As I indicated earlier, that currently there were 4 funds. There were supposed to be 4 boards, and Secretariat providing Secretariat services to all those 4 boards, but now this clause 6 is amending that, because we are amending also the objective of the new fund now, which will be the Disaster Relief Fund, the Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund. Then clause 7 seeks to insert section 25A in the Principal Act in order to provide for discontinuation and transfer of certain funds. As I have mentioned earlier, that we currently have the Refugee Fund, we have the Strait President Fund, we have the Disaster Relief Fund. With the introduction of the new Act, these funds will cease to exist, and then we'll have only one fund, which will be Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund. So the assets and liabilities will be transferred then to the new fund. And then this one talks to the summary. It's a continuation from the previous one, which indicates all amounts credited to any fund, as I had mentioned earlier, will be transferred to the new fund. Any board established by the minister in terms of section 17 and responsible for managing a fund referred to will be dissolved, as I had mentioned. But currently, given that these funds are dormant, so there are no boards that are responsible for providing management over those funds. And then all liabilities, assets will then be transferred to the new fund. I think. And then clause 8 of the bill seeks to amend section 36. As I indicated earlier, it talks to giving minister powers to be able to give, in terms of making regulations. And then clause 9 of the bill seeks to provide for the short title and the commencement of the act. So then, number 10, we are recommending that the committee note the proposed bill and for further processing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me get the name correctly. Mr. Ngobeni. Ngobeni. Papa Ngobeni. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. And I think as a committee, we note and welcome the presentation. As you correctly say, we will be further deliberating on the bill. What I can say is that, you know, the more you present this amendment, it is becoming clearer. I think even honorable members can agree with me that where we are now, we are better off than the first day when we got this brief from the NCOP. So I'm going to allow the honorable members on the platform, if there's anything that you want to comment or you need further clarity, before I can hand over to our stakeholders to make comments or to seek clarity. Honorable members on the platform. Honorable Mela. Okay, thank you very much. I don't see hands on this gadget, so you can, if there's anyone who can speak, who wants to speak, you can just speak. If there's no one, because I think this is the third or fourth presentation that we as honorable members have benefited on. So I'm going to request that if there are stakeholders in the platform who wants to comment, can do so by show of hands. And then I'll also allow the stakeholders that are attending physical to also raise their hands and maybe for clarity seeking or comments. Thank you very much. John, can you please check the platform if there are any hands? But this fundraising amendment bill, why amendiwa gona nong, and ke nagana gore government ya rona ya leka ka bojotlhe gore di act tse le tsa gale tse di sa re benefiting gona yaanong ba leke gore ba di tlise ko bathong ba di change. And go botlhokwa gagolo gore le commente, because once president I sign into act, o ka se kgone gore o tle o batle gore nna ne ke steng nna ne ke sa tlhaloganye gore ne go etsagala eng. So I'm just going to request that you can now you have an opportunity to ask clarity seeking questions or to make comments gore no ra dumela gore molao o ka gore kwa khale o outdated dilo di change gona jwanong re na le mathata a different from arne re na lona khale kwa abo di refugee fund e leng gore ha isa tlholele applicable. And then that day na re tshepisitse gore you promised us that you will also present the figures on different into a budget on different funds where are we sitting and the interest that has been accumulated, so that re tsebe gore tšhelete go ka rena le mathata gona yaanong kwa Manskrala wa bona re kgone go tseba gore ntho e ka kgona gore e re thuse yang ka pele ha re tlhagetswe ke mathata a re tlhagetseng ko Manskrala a cholera. So the other thing that I also want to maybe to get clarity further that day Nchobeni ke gore you mentioned NPOs as playing a critical role in the whole process, because we have an NPO Act. What is the difference between the fundraising act and the NPO Act? So maybe if you can tlhalosetsa fela gore re tsebe gore di fapana mo kae. Re tlang ka matsogo. John, can you please note, because I only see one hand, but Westranda, I know you can't go without asking anything. Ke ba go high. Le ka semphoqe ne? John is noting hands, Ntate John o re notela matsogo yalo, and then o tla re bolella gore dinomoro tsa rona di tsamaya byang. We are first going to do this side and then re tlo tla ka mo hape. Ke a leboha.
Morning. My name is Colleen and I'm from Tembisa. So I had one question regarding the disaster management thing. So my question is, I actually got to learn about disaster management within our communities last year. And I wanted to ask one thing from what I've learned. So I want to know, what does the disaster management offer or supply when a disaster occurs within a community? Because there was a disaster that happened, I think somewhere in January, in Tembisa, within the informal settlement called Winnie Mandela. So what happened is there were about 5 shacks that actually caught fire and they were completely destroyed, but fortunately no one died. So apparently the disaster management team, or whatever they call them, they only supplied blankets. So I just want to know and understand, what does the disaster management supply to the people that actually get disasters that occur within their communities? Thank you.
Sanbona. Ubonga nikamthembu SDB. Okay, so ubaba lapha ubani ubaba Ngubeni. Yeah, so bengifuna ukuchecka nje na ukuthi besina during COVID besina I solidarity fund. Be under which it was responsible, it was under which, or it was under presidency, and angiboni la in terms of one of the fund was organized and it has a board, I'm told. So imali yakhona yephi why ingangenile? So that's one question. 2, kuna enye labati South African Defence Force Fund. So you say you are amalgamating all the funds in one fund. So what about those ones that are not appearing, but they are existing somewhere in the corner? So imali yakhona ngifika in one and ibe in a proper responsibility. And then and another question. Does it all the fund itself, are you going to publish objectives why? So almost similar to what Osisiqeda ishuti. If fund le yenzani, if ukusha lapha emkhukhwini uyothenga ingubo namastress only, or nophana in time frame ukuthi labantu laba abavelele lesibhicongo, are you going to assist them until this time? Kune time frame ekhona na? Yeah, that's another. The last one. Do we have local, provincial, and national disaster fund? This fund, is it going to exist only national? Whatever happened at provincial or province, local and national, because I get province. So it just some structures are nje. But le province here flowed. So that's my question. In terms of local, do we have a disaster that is focusing on that and focusing on national? So yeah, those are the only questions that I wanted to get clarity. It just corner le engikhohli my usisi ngibhekile yang intimidate sister. Hey. Wenza ukuthi ngikhohla ama point but ke yes ngizobuya futhi ngiyabonga shela.
Okay.
Hi, Kalibitsa ke kopano. Na I just wanted to ask hore ka bane di funds tse ba tlo di kopantsha to national disaster what fund. I just want to know hore like So ba di kopanya, so is it for the benefit ya batho or it's for the benefit of compensatory funds? Because what I know is, how about disaster somewhere, it doesn't happen immediately where like they come, but to more disaster thing. So I want to know who this thing, does it come now? Because like there are things still like the legislations, but then deal thing. So I want to know what does it come now? Kona le like nebai kona nebai nahana no hore like kitlametse ba di kopanye or that's just what I wanted to know.
Thank you. Good
So,
morning.
The last one.
Speaking right now is the chairperson of the Westside Park Community Crisis Committee, Bafana Mdumaya. My issues here concerning this fundraising act. One of the issues that were mentioned is that the amount of money lie locked in different funds, which causes more corruption, and it consumes time of the victims who have been affected by whatever situation that we've been through. So I wanted to know from our NCOP that what are the issues or what are the steps that you want to implement in order to ensure that funds are reached on time to such victims. The other issue is the institutional arrangement as contained in the Fundraising Act number 107 of 1978 are not conducive to respond immediately on issues of emergency, especially to vulnerable communities. We have communities whereby we are affected by floods or rain. Most people, they don't even know where to report or such matters. They are affected by rain and winter seasons as we are adhered to right now. But then when such things are happening, they don't know where to report such things. Or we don't have any task team that takes care of people who have been affected by disasters in our community. My last issue is the issue of load shedding. Load shedding forms part of the national disaster crisis currently, because now we are in the issue of winter season, whereby the government is not reaching towards the vulnerable communities as a whole. We have grandparents who stay on their own. They don't have enough or rather material to protect themselves during this winter season. So we just wanted to know from you as the NCOP, what are the issues that you want to implement furthermore? Thank you.
Are we done this side? Okay, we'll move to this side, John. Ho na le motho a batlang ho bua ka moo? John, masesicedile ngapha ngizocela sibuyele kula bhuti ne. The second last okhulume before ubafana. Yeah.
Sanibonani. Ngegama uTakalane Ramaphosa from Freedom Park Ward 119 region G. Chairperson, it's just that we figure so phakathi we program.
I didn't get the name. Takalane Ramaphosa.
Yes.
Serious when. Ngempela. Okay. Siyabonga Babu Ramaphosa.
All right. All right, no, ngifuna ukubuza ngoba singeniseni semaphakathini kwe program ne. The main concern ngifuna ukubuza kuma NPOs, when the bill talks to ama NPOs, there is this red tape ekhona in terms of maybe NPOs mafuna ukuyenza ama programs, fundraising and everything. You'll find ukuthi maybe there's a certain letter which you need to get maybe from the councillor in order to fundraise for such. So lento leyo I destroy ama NPO amaningi. So I wanted to ask, does the bill talk to such, can we fundraise without going to the councillor or to someone to get an authority ukuthi siye. Then coming to Leo Futiyama NPO, we've got people running NPOs, which njoba that question, it's been a challenge for them, ukuthi bathola ama funds. Right now, there's a program which I think national, we are running the program of growing a boy child in everything. So you find good right now, they are active NPOs, but they are challenged in getting funds. Kunama camp, this July, there are camps, many babiza nama resorts. Abize nama NPO, get the boys, come with them. This is the amount which we'll charge all and everything. So you find Guti as an organization, we don't even have a 1 rand, but we've got 700 boys which want to attend the program. How do we get assistance in fundraising for that? Also, for people who don't own organizations, but who are active in the social platform, how do those people battle fundraising for you? Then lastly, ngizovala ngale disaster yamatuna. From where we coming, last year in 9 December, there were floods. Many graves, they sunk inside even till today. So how does the department respond to such disaster? Because namatuna manye mese waphume nophuma amabox and into yafika what happened? Just pick it in the city parks, they came just to put back lawo matuna lawa lavulekile akayenzeke anything. Also, we've got a informal settlement where we are sitting. Also, now last year, it was affected ngama floods. And we never saw even one official from a Department of Social Development coming to check on the people, do they have food? Because many people lost their houses through lama floods, lawaya, and the Konabanya, even till today, basayenzu masningisane kabanban, because that place was declared it's not a residential place. So on that one, how does the bill respond to that? Yeah.
Dumela, ke nna Magdalene Kekana, ke tswa ko Ekurhuleni, Tembisa Ward 7. Nna ke batla ho tseba hore di fundraising tsa lona di bereka jwang, because ha re zama ho include di councillor hore re batla ho thusa clinic e kreye shelter because ba ha ona di funds. Re bereka bjang councillor e tla o isa ko o a o isa ko o, then ba re ko lona as a clinic committee le na le di rights tsa ho etsa di fundraising. But rona as a clinic committee a re tsebe hore di fundraising re thoma kae ho di etsa, di tšhelete di ko kae, re thusa ke bo mang. Ho tshwana le dintlu tse di fiang ka baka la di load shedding, re lata di councillor re batla ho thusa ka tsona di disaster what tsa lona, but a re ke re thuso. Re kopa hore le re botse hore thuso e ko kae mo re tla kgonang ho emella re thuse community. Ke a leboga.
Greetings to the chairperson and everyone at large. I'm Felicia Morakile from Soweto, Ward 21. I'm in Joburg. I'd kindly like to appreciate and give thanksgiving for the bill, and then focusing on the disaster relief fund. Therefore, I agree with the bill, which will be focusing on helping out vulnerable people and affected people, such as unemployed people which lost their properties, family members, as I am also a victim of one of the people who lost our properties due to one of the disasters that once happened in Krugersdorp. I think it was around 2017 or 18, where also the school, a primary school that is in Krugersdorp near Sterfontein Hospital, it was also affected, where some of the other kids, I think they lost their lives, and some were had to be taken to hospitals and stuff. So, and then under the section 17.3, I would like to ask that only appointing one member who will run the duties, do you think that this person will be able to do all the things by him or herself, or don't you think that it will be better that from that 10 people, at least maybe appointing 2 so that this person can be able to help the other, just to make sure that there's no pressure on only one person. And then under the section 25A, which talks about the Refugee Relief Fund, I would like to kindly plead that may you also please do some investigations regarding this, because as there's, in our country, there's some sort of corruption and stuff. Just in case it might happen that some of the refugees, they might use this fund for their own benefit or some sort of corruption. Thank you so much.
Dumela. Lebitso la ka ke Kelemogile from Ward 21. I'm running a foundation, Mletsane Foundation. Bana ba rena le bana 120. Question ya ka ke utlwile o bua ka di NPOs tse thusiwang. Disaster e re nang le yona since COVID-19. Re na le disaster e kgolo ya hore batho ha ba sebetse, unemployment rate e godimo, and tlala e ngata. How feeda bana le batho ba bagolo batla. So nna nka thabela hore this disaster management e tle ko locationing e tlo bona, because we also have the disaster ko Soweto ya hore unemployment rate is up, and youth ya rona most e nkile ke di drugs, ha rena dijo, ke di tshokodiso haholo. So if this fund e ka sebeletsa hore ba tle ko di NPOs, because most of the NPO they are sokola ho thola di fund. Re fa bana ba rona as abuti nacho from our pockets when we say we rekopa di fund, ha re di thole di fund. But if they can go and check the NPOs tse sebetsang, and then ho sebetsiwe hore okay, if una le batho ba ileng hore this section una le batho ba ikana ba ileng hore they need the fund, who investigate and the fund tse di thuse, because of COVID-19 le yona ka bo yona ebile a disaster to us. Lot of people ba feletswe ke mesebetsi, and re na le ntho tse ngata tse le reng di a etsala, and e entse hore le crime e be kodimo. But if e ka tla ya tlo thusa di NPOs, wa kgonahala hore dijo di be teng ko di NPOs ntse thusang to the community, that will help. Thank you.
Yeah, so that when you respond,
Good morning,
once.
everyone. My name is AC from AC Home, from Tembisa. I'm running an organization called AC Home. Kinale matata amasaraska. I'm helping all these people, these kids from the street, since from 2018. I have been looking for help or any funds or anything. I don't get any support from anyone. Everything is coming from my pocket. We got this disaster because I'm helping these kids and they don't have support. After I help them from the street, badlama drugs. Mabadlama drugs and enyabasiza. I don't take any age or any unkate any age and guza wonka ma age game. But after that, I'm getting stuck with them because, and then, I don't know what to do. Only those ones are going back to school. Only those ones, they accept them back to work, and then I managed to take them back to work. But some of them, and then I don't know what to do. I need a help because this is, some of them, they're our youth. So I need a support and I need help. Where am I going to get a fund? Because I'm dealing with everything through my pocket. So I need help because I think I help more than 300 and something kids in my house. entire Tembisa, they know that good, and then I got a good heart, and then I'm helping these kids. So my problem, I'm stuck with them. Where am I going to get help? Because, and then aguna msebenzi, aguna anything. I'm trying to create jobs for them. I'm going to Pick and Pay, I'm going everywhere. But my issue is, they're still going back to get these drugs because abanam msebenzi. How am I going to help them? I need help, and I need a bigger space to help them. I got that passion to help them in the heart. Thank you so much.
Dumelang kaofela, nna lebitso la ka ke Cornelius Ramela, ke tswa ke le ko Ward 21. My questions are just simple, 2 questions. Firstly, it's about the presentation. The presentation, is it a proposal or already it's at the verge of implementation? That's my first question. The second question is that what actually informs the fundraising amendment bill? Is it based on the framework? Is it the KPI or the KPAs? Thank you.
Dumelang. Lebitso ke John Tsepomletsana. I just want to say thanks to Ramaphosa because duty, and he told me yesterday, he said, John, I want us to go somewhere. Ke John Tsepomletsana or Ward 119. With the hard legislature, I was happy because of one of the good year we brought legislature go Daveland, go from primary school. We are who we are, legislature. We have a petition also called legislature. Thank you so much. But our concern is one. We misuse money in the wrong way, but now the question is, if you remember in the olden days, we ran a problem that our name service for youth yaruna, our name service for baholo, and then another thing at the age of 35 to this age, or at the age of 20 or 18 or to 35, also to service, and the thing, it demoralizes about Wabang. I wanted to know from you guys to say, we want to know that if we can go back, there are lands that we call illegal dumping areas, and we want our place to be clean. If we want your help about us having something like, if you remember in the olden days, there was Ambach, there was Technical, there was Technicon. If we can take our foreign brothers, because of the program, because if you look at Freedom Park, Usheba, all the squatter camp, Okena Orange Farm, Okena all these areas, Okena go gating he restay much Otanko Mozambique. Mucho it's a welding. It's a welding. Wanaka Udizumohana, Wanaka Kenya Upi. But if we can have something, come up with something to utilize all that lands, illegal dumping land, and other lands that we say because of no. If you look at our area, the Kerek, D15, the land is at Kerek D15, Mara land of youth, re-empower, re-motivate, and not on. So I wanted to know that if we can come with Rabata, we want to transfer skill. Governing Baruna. Johannesburg water is having a problem, challenges, gas, service delivery. City power having a city power. How about and transfer skill, co-youthing? For the next time, now, when I stolen cables, when I pipes to swang, no can I do Wi-Fi, nobody usually the cables are Wi-Fi. But how do we stop that? How about really an area where you guys will come and say, we can utilize this land really can use the container, hardly can use the container. Can you guys take Banaba Valentine, take our Zimbabwean brothers, Baba looks at the generator, Baba is the handwork and other stuff, welding, panel beating, car spraying, everything. If city, why can't we take that cars? Instead of rule farm, this foreign brother school, could be playing Zabona, can nepotism. Why thinking that thing, refer youth Arona, to empower them next time, if this guys Batamaya, we know at least we are covered. That's the first thing. Second thing, as Abut Nabuaka, Tabasama Bika, and other stuff, I have a serious problem. We have the potholes thing for years. We have pump station area Ealing pump station, saving the 15,000, but it's only used one pump station, one pump machine. And we have put a complaint. Capex, the service and other stuff. Till today, Rale put using 10 years, 15 years. And I had a check. Youth you are transfer skill. We can bring the different youth in everyone. Because we keep on saying, but what do we do? Because so can you guys tell something as you managed to help us 7 years back? Can you please, guys? And the last thing, I'm asking you nicely. If this problem never read, can you try or lay it doesn't matter if from back is camp or orange farm guys, please try a level best to workshop everywhere. Receive information. It's because of even our councillors, they are busy. I say everything but so Nerukupa or this program later on, try a level best. Or later I say how can only one to one. You guys you take the contact. Can we come guys at least for 1 hour or 2 hours? Workshop. At least at least it's choose and two. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Bafana Sekela. I'm from Extension 15, Siboke. My question is, I think I got 3 questions if I'm not mistaken. My first question is that SRD, okay, I'm wondering why social relief distress is not included in SRD. Ke question aka ya pele because le yona intse fela e wela under government again. Number 2 ne ke kopa ho botsa if a councillor ska ha o tletse disaster ska ha ne ba o hlalosa ka yona. So hona le some of the batho be loreng where ke tswang teng hona le batho be loreng ba latlhelwa ke disaster mekhukhu chain. So the problem is our ward councillor o tlile kore ba shoota dinepe ba claima tšhelete ba claima kore ba isa government, so government a ba fa tšhelete, so a ya fitla ho di victims. So ke di steps tse feng tse leng re tshwanela hore re di latele hore kore for kore reporta botsotsi bo be leng ba boentse. So ke tlo kopa ho botsa ka ya ho qetela. Last time I never le Miatun. Ki reportile ka hore mo ke tswang teng ha ona a mobile clinic. So since bare ke emele call, even now I'm still waiting. So I don't know maybe hore ba mfonela is going to take nako e kae ke tsena. Ke kopa ho tseba. Amen.
Greetings to all. My name is Nero Chabalala. I'm from Zone 21. My main concern is the issue of Oh, Nero Chabalala. Oh, yeah. I'm Nero Chabalala from Sebuki in Zone 21. My main concern is the issue of substance abuse, as I'm a drug dealer. And drug abuse is a disaster in my society, my nerves. 19 January this year, I was one of fellow honorables who participated at Johannesburg GPL. Several matters were discussed, usually that day, like women abuse, GPL programs, and women and substance abuse, and many more empowerment guides. Our Honorable Premier Panyaza then raised the promise about eliminating drugs at our province, as they are one of the factors that destroy our youth. But I have concerns. First of all, we don't have that power to end drugs because there are legal drugs that are overdosed and sold illegally without prescriptions at our province, like cough syrups containing codeine, anti-anxiety pills, and antidepressants that are abused by our youth. Secondly, as a user, I witness police officers collecting bribes from the dealers. So my question is, how is he gonna end drugs? Fact is, we can't end access to drugs. I think it is best if we focus on reducing the number of users and saving young souls together as communities united with our government by power, by force. So my question is, as an individual, can I get funds from the government to try reduce number of users and dealers in my community?
Sanbonani, baphathi nama comrades nawola. Nguxolani mina wakashabalala. Ngisuke Soweto. Elami lana isicelo ukuthi sirana ama NPO on the ground and siyazibona izinto ezenzakala daily, every day, but kena only to find ukuthi sizotshena bobani ngoba this office is too far from us. As abantu thina sisestradeni esibonayo into esihlukumezayo as communities and singanamandla sisebenzela on our pocket ukuthi sihelpe umphakathi wethu. Hence kunezimali esezi allocatiwe kodwa ezingafiki kithi. Isicelo sami ukuthi kena this office must come nearer to the people. Now we are trying ukuthi siyenze iforum esowethu yama NPOs whereby sizokwazi ukuthi kena sikwazi ukuthi sifuna ukuthi sinriche. So why not kena from that office kube nabantu who will enzobathuma to go and listen to those NPOs and see ukuthi kena where can you help us as abantu esihleli thina estradini esibona izinto zenzeka on our community day in day out. Ngoba into efailisa this thing ukuthi kena abantu bangatholi uncedo is based on ukuthi lezi zinto zikhulunywa on this table then it ends there. How do you do ukuthi kena nisondele towards us ngoba already we are moving. We have open spaces that we are utilizing now for the sake of ukuthi kena si create ama job opportunity. Sifundisa abantu ngokulima. We are taking this even into schools, but no one is recognizing that. My take ukuthi kena that office must have maybe create a structure whereby it will go and assess ukuthi kena all the things that kena are budgeted for us. Do they reach us now? Ngoba ekugcineni it ends ukuthi kena we find ukuthi kena izinto ziyaphuma, but on the lower level nothing is happening. Poverty is still growing, and tomorrow sizobe sesine poverty na sesithi national disaster. Say national disaster vele. Asingafailing this youth of ours based on ukuthi kena there are people who are compelling on ekhwameni zabo, but kena kube nabantu abazomonitor ukuthi kena all the funds do reach where they should ukuthi zifike khona lezo zinto. Thank you, Sihlalo.
Good morning again. Okay. There's a question I forgot to ask. What does the government do if Rona as organization we need okay, renal organization, all nation, the funds for something, for Tusabana, basically for Dijo. And then we went to the councillor another organization so that the organization can help us. So can I ask if the councillor yena akhana ho thusa, what does the government do about it? Because we as the organization are stuck in between, not knowing where to go. Because hari yako councillor organization which is Sanko, hari yako Sanko ka councillor. So what does the government do ka councillor eleng jwalo? What do we do? What's the next step? What should we take after? Like reagai. Thank you.
ba bangata batho ba batla ho bua, I don't know, ke tswele pele.
We don't want to leave anyone behind, Babu Njoben. I don't know whether should we proceed or end here, then we'll get a second round.
Maybe some answers will answer them.
Yeah. Ma, you'll be the last one to speak, ne? And then Ritlonga another round. You might find that in total bozang but buntate bana ba national ba tla khona hore ba e arabe. Wa e bona? So we'll take you and then we then take a next round. Thank you.
Oh, okay, Sanmonani Kamala Munguzandile Wakapelebane. I'm from Ward 46 Soweto. I'm a small scale farmer. Ngizwilela mama ukhuluma nge food security. I'm one of umuntu osizayo in my community. Nginayo NPO ngisiza abogogo ema endlini zabo ngibapha ama seedling ngiyabafundisa nge farming. Please isicela usizo kakhulu. Thank you.
Okay, Siyabonga for all the inputs. Before I can allow Ulon Ubabu Nchobeni to can respond, I think we get a sense and a concern Babu Nchobeni ukuthi ingathi substance abuse nayo ifuna nje ukuba yi disaster kwayona, and the high unemployment rate as well is also heading towards that. And ubhuti wathi sizo end up as in a disaster, poverty disaster. So we're taking that into consideration, and also to thank Ubabu Ramaphosa ukuthi invite Ubabu John, because you know my concern was also like sometimes we invite stakeholders but we did not give them a workshop so that when they do their inputs must be relevant. So it used to happen before. I don't know before people can come and comment on the bill, you should have maybe give them a workshop before. But we are welcoming all the comments, and I hope staff at the end you'll be able to convert some of the questions that were raised into comments, because I could pick up quite a number of them that we can convert. Thank you very much. Over to you, Babu Nchobeni.
Sibonge Hlalo, sibonge nangembuzo enisibuze yona. So okunye when we travel around and present, we also learning in the process to get to understand what the issues that are affecting the people in their communities. But maybe to just start in the order that was the questions were asked, with the chairperson seeking clarity on the difference between the NPO Act as well as the Fundraising Act. The Fundraising Act of 1978 only has one chapter that is currently applicable, which is the chapter dealing with establishment of boards and management of boards. So chapter 1 and chapter 2 were repealed when the NPO Act of 1997 was introduced. So the NPO Act now is responsible for the registration of NPOs, issues of compliance, and issues of ensuring that the funding model, how the NPOs are supposed to be funded, and the fundraising. So those chapters which were dealing with fundraising, about fundraising organizations in the Fundraising Act, which was chapter 1 and chapter 3, are no longer part of the fundraising. It's just chapter 2 now. And then the NPO Act is dealing with the issues of registration and compliance and fundraising by NPOs. And also the issues of funding. And the question about the amount of money that is in these funds that we were discussing earlier. So for instance, the only fund that is active, we have about approximately 100 million in the dormant funds. The only fund that is currently active is the Disaster Relief Fund, which only focuses on the issues of disasters. But now, once these funds have been amalgamated into one, it will be managed by one board and that will be one fund, which when I explained earlier, I indicated that there will be an added objective. So manje into esizama ukuyenza ukuthi sifuna ukuba proactive because indlela besiresponda ngayo kuma disasters esikhathini edlule bese abantu abareactayo. So now indlela esizama ukwenza ukuthi the fund lesizama ukuyiqala manje ngokuthi sihlakaze lawa bese sohlanganisa into eyi1 ukuthi ikwazi ukusiza because imengizwa imibuzo eminingi that was raised by the members. It's what we are trying to address through the current fund to be efficient. So maybe to add, let me just also highlight the current funds, if I may, maybe per fund. We have State President Fund, which is sitting at around approximately over 40 million. We have the Refugee Fund, which has 640,000 in the fund. We have Social Relief Fund, which have 39,000, and then we have the Active Disaster Relief Fund, which 39 million. I'm sorry for that. So which has 39 million. So manje into esizama ukuyenza ukuthi ngoba lezi imali lezi kumanje zihleli azisebenzi because izathu zazenzelwe zona azisekho relevant esikhathini samanje njengoba zazikade ziqalwe ngesikhathi sobandlululo. So manje into esizama ukuyenza ukuthi ke azisebenze because even i-Auditor General nama-portfolio committees adlule nabo barezama complain ukuthi lezi imali ehleli kunenkinga engaka ezibhekene nabantu kuma-communities ngabe we adding i-support as we indicate that njengoba zihleli zona zithola interest though it's not like zihleli and they are not getting interest. So each and every month there is an interest that is accruing on those funds. So sibuyela kwi-question kasisi ngapha earlier ukuthi maybe but I'll try to answer i-question A1, maybe amanye ama-question azokwazi ukuthi aphenduleke as we go forward. Usisi was asking about disaster management as a whole ukuthi thina I think maybe was asking as a department ukuthi how do we normally respond to indaba ze-disaster. So maybe mengase ngichaze nje ukuthi i-Disaster Management Act is the act eyenzelwe ukuthi umthetho lokuthi ubhekelele zonke inhlekelele yona act ekuyiyona enkulu kakhulu eSouth Africa ebhekelela indaba zenhlekelele. Emese kuthi ke ama sector ahlukahlukene ikhokta iyona emandatewe umthetho lo wezenhlekelele ukuthi kube iyona ebhekelelana nawo ukuthi iwa involve kanjani ama stakeholder when i-disaster yenzeka. Mhlambe let's say kune disaster eSoweto kunama floods, kune disaster eGruleni. Ama stakeholder ahlukahlukene then they are called upon to come and discuss how they are going to respond when the disaster happen. So thina ke si sector njenge Department of Social Development, we are also involved in those meetings whereby because kusuke ukuthi disaster is a shared responsibility by all the sectors that are part of disaster management. So sisuke avoid ukuthi singa respond as an individual then kuqhamuke for instance, I'm making an example, another organization, maybe NGO has already provided blankets, we can't provide blankets. A department, maybe ATs has provided, and not we come and provide the same thing. So sometimes we become reactive in that sense, because we are coordinated as the stakeholders who are supposed to be responding to a disaster. Sometimes we have to wait for disaster to be declared. Some stakeholders don't have to wait for disaster to be declared. They can just, as soon as the floods occur in Egruleni or in Joburg or in Tshwane, then they are on the ground. But sometimes we end up being reactive because we have to wait to say, this is a local disaster which affected the area. The local municipality is still dealing with that matter. Then it's escalated to the province. Then it is escalated to the national and then declared the national disaster. But the stakeholders are already on the ground providing relief, but doesn't necessarily mean that we are not doing anything as a sector. We just also don't want to duplicate services because as you might be aware that our departmental agencies, ISASA, as we mentioned earlier, in the Social Assistance Act, there is a regulation which deals with the issue of providing disaster relief by SASSA to people who are affected. So this act that we are amending, it talks about the Disaster Relief and National Social Development Fund with a specific objective, which is to provide relief to people, provide humanitarian relief to persons, organizations, and bodies who are affected by disasters. But we are not saying we are the first responders. We are part of the team of responders when a disaster happens. And on the question of the COVID funds, I think maybe because there was a solidarity fund, maybe that question, I was not sure whether the reference was to the COVID, to the solidarity fund that was established during COVID. Okay. And then the issue that I was mentioning earlier about is this only the fund that will be based in the national level, or can we be able to respond to disasters as they happen all over the country? Maybe just to ukuchaza nje ukuthi into eyenzeka meku indawo imisuke mhlawumbe ihlaselwe inhlekelele ukuthi ama stakeholder yahlala kunama local joint operations committees in the municipal level, kube nama provincial joint committees in a provincial level, kube khona ama national joint committees in a national level. So our level of intervention then it's at a point when by the matters has been escalated sometimes. For instance, we know that if a disaster has affected 2 provinces for that matter, that issue can be declared as a national disaster. Or if a province feels that a matter has reached a level whereby the resources that are allocated to a province are not able anymore to address the disaster as it happens, so the matter will then be declared for additional resources to be sourced to be able to assist. But what I'm trying to say is that the fund that we are trying to create is not the sole kind of fund. We operate within the disaster management space, and other stakeholders as well, they have a role to play. But what the fund, the act, the amendment is trying to achieve, the board will identify, for instance now, let's say community empowerment projects, whereby abantu abafana nomama kade chaza lapha eqaleni ukuthi is looking after the kids and all that, ukuthi abantwana mhlambe badinga usizo. So then those, once the board, let's say for example, is conduct an assessment or is call proposals for it. I'm making just an example, ukuthi we're calling for proposal maybe from organizations in communities dealing in food security. And then those organizations will come forward. Then the board will be able to say, okay, these are the organizations that will be implementing agents who will be assisting us to implement. When there's a disaster in Soweto, we will call, let's say maybe there is an organization dealing with community gardens and community issues, then agricultural projects as well. The board will be able to say, okay, we fund this organization with so much money because this organization is dealing on the matters of disaster risk, because people must not be hungry. The organization is responsible maybe for community feeding schemes and all that, community gardens and ensuring the soup, maybe soup kitchens and all those things. So the board then will be able to identify those projects, be able to avail funding based on the assessment that they will have developed to look into those proposals by those organizations.
I want to go back to that 1 year COVID.
Okay.
Because the way I understand COVID funding was in the presidency, and then what about the other smaller funds that you are not aware of that are sitting somewhere? Again, this amendment bill seeks to consolidate all those funds that were sitting somewhere, but there are others maybe that they know of. So what about those other funds? Why are they not, being brought together? And then the other thing that he also raised was that at local level, because that is where things are starting. And then, as you correctly said, they are being escalated. So the question is, at local level, if Mkukuyacha today, you need to be assisted now, whether this fund will also apply at local level before see Lulale. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Slalo. Maybe to respond to a question about what about other funds that are there. So these lema funds lawa kade sikhuluma ngawo esizama ukuwahlanganisa manje are legislated in terms of one legislation. So zonke are established under Fundraising Act. Le ACT it's outdated. ACT manje ayikho aligned ne PFMA, ayikho aligned ne Disaster Management Act. So then as a department we are able ukuthi sikwazi ukwa dissolve and then swahlanganisa into one, because lama funds lawe swahlanganisa manje belonga ku department eyodwa okuyi department social development yona is administering these funds. We can ngesize sikwazi ukuthi thathe le fund le engithe ibelonga ku South African National Defence Force sihlanganise nalama funds aku department, because asikho responsible for the fund le South African National Defence Force is run by the other department. So ingakho ke umthetho uyakwazi ukusivumela ukuthi lama funds lawa under i department singakwazi ukuthi siwahlanganise because abelonga under i department. But ke amanye ama funds angaphandle mhlambe ku department awusivumeli umthetho ukuthi singawathatha sithi because sizama ukwenza le fund. What we can into esingayenza ke mase sesihlanganisile le fund ukuthi singacela abantu ukuthi siqokelele ke imali manje through i board ukuthi si raise more funds from ama stakeholders, singene na sign ama MOU by board and senze sure ukuthi ama strategic partners mhlamba bo solidarity fund, like the fund ekade operation like solidarity fund, abo Lotto, abo Banbani, all those big organizations with a lot of money, they can be able then to put money into this fund when there are issues that affect abantu basekhaleni. I board then iyakwazi ukuthatha ama decision ukuthi i-assist abantu abazobe besenkingeni ngaleso sikhathi based on my assessment azobe senziwa i board. I'm not sure if was it.
I think the last one was on the time frame to say the bill, does it have time frames? If we need disaster now, are we reacting within 48 hours or within specific hours, and then be accessible to the community? Time frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, ngiyabonga Sihlalo. Maybe uchaza ama time frame because into eyinkinga kakhulu is that le mali it would be managed by a board. So for a board to take a decision, the board need to convene. But in a matter of in an emergency situation, then the time frame obviously has to be short. So meaning that, let's say a particular place is affected by a disaster, the way that the board operates is that assessments will be conducted, a need or gaps will be identified to ukuthi ikuphi esingakwazi ukuthi si intervene khona, kushoda kuphi in terms of humanitarian relief that is provided by ama stakeholders. Because ukukhumbula into esizama ukuycorrecta through the bill ukuthi sizama ukuthi sibe efficient, sithi siphuthumise uncedo kubantu abasuke beaffectwe disaster, kodwa futhi singafocus kakhulu ekutheni provide only when the disaster has happened. Kube nawo ukuthi siyakwazi ukuthi disaster ingakenzeki nje abantu abakwazi ukuthi bese kuhlaleni bakwazi ukuthi banawo ama projects ayenzakalayo ema communities abo afocusa kwizindaba zokuthi ba reduce I risk ye disaster. So ngaleyo ndlela ama communities azoba educated ukuthi abe resilient as well with disaster, ukuthi mekwenzeka kuba ne disaster bazi ukuthi okay, at least we have this and that we can be able to survive assisted by this particular fund. we noted some of the questions, but I was maybe thinking some of them will have to refer to our colleagues who are dealing in the NPO unit, or maybe colleagues from the community development space. We will note them, but we can be able to maybe provide a response today at a later point, or maybe come back another time and be able to provide a response.
Okay, you can then come in and respond. The SRD, is it, it's part of the disaster and it's debt fund.
Okay, maybe just to there's another one, I think it was the second last question we talked about the COVID SRD. I wanted to indicate, because I noted it to say the SRD as it stands is provided in terms of the Social Assistance Act legislation, but limited to this amenda manje is the Fundraising Act, but it doesn't regulate COVID SRD. It's regulated through a different legislation. So we are trying to align the SRD that is provided during disasters with the disaster relief that will be provided by the board. Because SASSA provide, for instance, blankets, food, and all other issues that people might need, people who are displaced, maybe in a community hall when floods happened and all that. So that is why we are saying, as a sector, we need to have a sector approach when we address issues of disaster. So the SRD provided by SASSA should be aligned with the disaster relief that will be provided by the board when we are responding to disasters. And then there was a matter, the other matters, Chair, as I indicated, that substance abuse is becoming a disaster, and the matters that need to be dealt with by welfare. So we have noted some of the things, as I indicated earlier. We are learning, and we might not have questions now, but we are taking them into consideration, and we can be able to follow it up with our colleagues as well if we don't have answers to them.
Thank you very much. On the substance abuse, I think there is a toll-free number that communities can directly call when they need assistance. So we'll just make sure that just before the end of the meeting, we have that toll-free number so that they can be able to call that number. And then with regard to skills development, and I know that the Department of Social Development is doing something around skills development, skills transfer. If maybe when they consolidate the comments, they will then separate those that needs to go to other departments, like your Department of Health. There's somebody who raised an issue on a mobile clinic, and then that will also be then sent to the Department of Health to respond. There's no right or wrong answer. Everything that you said here is important to us, and we'll make sure that if we can't deal with it, as Ulona will then refer to the relevant department. So whatever that you said here is very important. So I'm just going to hand over to what's your name? Or Advocate Mudau, so that she can also respond to some of the issues that National could have not responded to. Over to you, Advocate.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, and good afternoon to all our stakeholders and all our guests that are available today. I will just respond to only one question, which is a concern to the municipalities. Remember, in terms of the municipalities, we have the Local Government Disaster Management Act. So if you are experiencing something in your community where you think it is some sort of a disaster, and then you consult your ward councillor or the PR councillor, and then you end up not getting any assistance there, and he end up referring you to certain structures of which you end up not getting any help, you can contact the Speaker's office. They do have the project managers there at the Speaker's office, and then they will be able to assist you there. So the Speaker will take the matter into himself, and then they will refer it into the council meeting. Then the mayor will declare it as a disaster. Then they will be able to assist you. So in case where you are experiencing problems with your ward councillors, you can always contact the Speaker's office. That is where you will get a relief there. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate. Can you maybe ibue gape ka Setswana or Sezulu or Sevenda so that you can all understand, because you are speaking English now.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Ndimacheloni. Ndibomakazi. Okay. Like Ndiambe bo Ramaphosa. Okay, I don't even have a problem. Ka area in Ebazurakayo. Ati rina ward councillor and then Rabana PR councillor. So the ward councillor responsibilities is our the manager that particular ward in Abakayo. The PR councillor is a proportional representative councillor for his constituency. Ya party yawe. So if the ward councillor over problem or the PR councillor over problem, then le go Speaker's office. Only the project managers there go Speaker's office. Those are the people that are responsible for the community. Because Speaker Leena, only the projects say I think there was a question here the KPI and KPA. So Speaker only the key performance areas and key performance indicators. So in terms of projects, there is a time frame. He must have completed those projects before the end of the financial year. July. So, the projects is or assist Luna as the community when you bring him the projects. Sorry, when you bring him things that you need, like some sort of community assistance, like Libatlo assist is it the social, in terms of social development, kapa unemployment rate, kapa whatever that you need assistance from, then you can always contact the Speaker. That is your entry level before you can even reach the national. You start at the local government, then Bona they will escalate it further to the national. Like as my colleague has already indicated, like if the local government exhausts the funds, they can always contact the province and then they seek some sort of a relief to the funds in Nenge. Thanks, Nicolibua, Honorable Chair.
Renole bua le rona bo Ramaphosa. No, ke tlo lefa that toll-free number. A lot of people raised, there's a young man who raised an issue of substance abuse and his commitment wanting to assist others. And then he even went further to even mention what are they using, body cough mixture and all, because most of those are happening more on the university thing. Our kids end up being users. So gitlokopa hore link number ke toll-free number the premier island I announce on national TV and radios and so on. Number ya teng ki 0800 22 8827. So ke nomoro ya mahala le ka e founela if you need more clarity on where to go when you have a family member or a member ya community eleng hore o abuser the substance jwalo jwalo. And then there was also a number of questions that were raised around NPO funding. So normally what is happening is that there's a period, I don't just remember, or is it September or October, mo e leng hore department will then advertise hore batho ba ba batlang go thusa government in terms of different services. Babang maybe tla baba thusang bana ka di substance abuse jwalo and many other both skills development they advertise. So you can go to your regional social development offices hona jwanong, so that they can tell you and explain to you when is the right time to can be able to apply and be funded, and what is needed and what criteria are they using to make sure that they can be able to fund you. So lastly, everything that you said here to us is very important. As I said, our colleagues who advocate are here. You'll be able to convert some of the critical or fundamental issues that were raised by our stakeholders, so that at the end, the submission that we are going to do at the end of this, when we conclude the process of public participation. So I don't know if there's anyone on something it's burning. If we are not going to say it, you feel whatever that the advocate and that Chobeni have tried to explain and clarify, they might have left out something. So recover even those who are in the platform, Bundata Ramaphosa, Megabu have were honored today.
The last request I have now from the chairperson, the committee, and also the social development. Can you kindly please do a visit in our ward? Please, please, please. That's the request which we have. Thank you. 119, Region G. 119.
119, Region
G.
G.
Freedom Park.
Freedom Park.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, it's noted. Any other pending issue? So now we have come to item number 8, which is submissions from the stakeholders. Remember, it does not end today. If Ufisha go high or on the road as we are discussing, you remember something, you still have an opportunity to can be able to do either written submissions or verbal submissions. So I'm going to ask John to assist us. Or if lebatlo ngwala o ka ngwala fela ka sentence one or romela WhatsApp or ubereka yang or email jalo jalo. Then le nako e tshwantseng hore be re submitile ka yona. John? Not John Wantate Ramaphosa, John Waka, okay. Where's my John?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the written submissions can be sent to me via email or via WhatsApp. I will. I also most of the people who are here, they've got my number, or we can talk about my email. I'll give you my email address after the meeting. Then people can forward them to me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Advocate, do you want to say something? Okay. No, ra leboga ge. So the last part, e ke tlo e kopang ko lona ke hore ana ra support amendment ya bill or ha re support as the stakeholder today. That is the last thing that I would request from yourselves. After the presentation, after the clarity that was given, after the responses to the questions that Ramaphosa, and I know that there are a lot of issues that we did not respond to. Issue of load shedding, it's something that we will be able to take to the relevant department so that they can be able to respond. You can also raise these issues, kadi petitions, so that you can be able to follow up. Uganewa labua li staff ukamontle hore bali choose hore how do you raise a petition? Then how raises a petition like that one ya clinic ra khona hore petition ya teng re kope department to respond, and then we call them, the department and the petitioner, to a meeting where you can be able to get your responses. So whatever that you said today, for us it's so important. So if you want to raise something maybe it's service delivery related, and we did not cover it when we are responding to your questions on the bill, you can then do that. Level advocate, they can be able to take those petitions and then respond. I don't see any hand from the platform. So I just want two people just to indicate whether they support this amendment or they are not supporting after we have clarified and explained everything. Can I get hands? Ntate ko morago re tlo nka, yeah, okay. John wa ka wa tla he.
Greetings to all of you. My name is Josh Tindi from Ward 46, Soweto. I support the bill, and I support the condition. And if this bill is gonna actually reach out for people who are in need, that will be highly supported. So, Riska Ibuwa fela more, and then if fellow honamo, honestly the problem and people cannot be reached out. Thank you.
I don't know who to choose to second. Assist me, please.
Let's get the seconder and then we'll get the descending view after that.
My name is Tembi Sonkosi from Ward 46, Soweto. I second the amendment of the bill. I wanted to make a comment as well in that consolidating all these things into one, it means the reduction of the many boards. It will make it easy for, I think, the NPOs and stakeholders when they make applications for the funding, so that the selection phase, you know, sometimes some of the applications that are made, you cannot be categorized well as to what kind of a relief are you looking for. But we see positivity in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Otlo emisang, Joanong ke o otlo ring ha support, only any descending view. But high sitting, Ariska ilwe batlane, and really bohe gore meeting waruna otsamaile hantle, and I must say ke buelle gape kere the inputs tse re di thotseng mona today, they are very important to us, and they will be consolidated and then they will then serve before the committee, and then the committee will also have their own view, and then Bo advocate will also come and advise us, and then we'll then consolidate, submit to the office of the speaker, sign off, then back to the NCOP if I'm correct, and then we'll then take it from there, because the process that is unfolding here, it's also unfolding in other provinces, yeah, but because this is affecting the whole country. So I really want to thank the National Department for making time to be with us so that we can be able to share with our stakeholders this important bill, and also thank the committee staff for preparing for us this venue. And I hope that transport and everything did not arrive late, and you managed to also have your tea and breakfast. And who do I left out? I did not leave anyone. Oh, our Hansat and our interpreter and interpreters as well. We really thank you, and apologize once more that you could not have Afrikaans interpretation, and most of the time we do have them in our meetings as stakeholders. So having said that, I'm going to thank everyone and then adjourn the meeting officially, and then John will come and explain for where to from here. Dilo tse tse re le ka di millions tsone tsa ho mamela tse re tlo kopa le di buse ko haya di sebetsi, and then and then re kope ja ke re kopile modimo hore meeting wa rona re butse ka thapelo, re kope gape hore ba re kwalle ka thapelo, then John o tlabe a sentse a hlalosa dilo tsa di lunch le di transport jwalo. Ke lebogile haholo, ke a leboga. The meeting is officially adjourned after the prayer. Ke a leboga.
Should I go ahead? Ne kopa re meka maoto, rapele. Jehova re a leboha ka hore o le wa bana le rona re qala re santsane re tlotswa re ya mahae, re kopa tshireletso ya hao, re kopa tataiso ya hao, ra leba ka tsohle tse etsetseng sebakeng sena ka lebitso la mona Jesu Kristo wa Nazareta, amen.
For making time to attend this meeting, even those who are not well. I've seen Member Magagula as well join the meeting, and Member Engelbrecht. Thank you very much for making time, even though you did not feel well, but you made it that you join our meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Lunch will be served